After losing her boat in an accident, Jen is washed ashore on an island, unconscious. When she comes to, she finds her friend Brad nearby and hurries over to him. To her horror, she sees a large piece of coral embedded in his stomach. She shouts for help, but there's no response, so she takes a flare gun from Brad's vest and drags him further from the shore. Jen removes the coral and uses fabric to cover his wound, but all Brad can ask is, "Did you see it?" Thinking he needs water, Jen rushes into the jungle, finds a coconut, and cracks it open with a rock. However, by the time she returns, Brad has already passed away. Jen then explores the island, but walking along the beach only leads her in a circle, bringing her back to where she began. Venturing into the jungle, Jen discovers a collection of abandoned items. She calls for help once more, but still receives no answer. Searching through a bag, she finds some medicine and a cooler with sealed soda bottles. Under some leaves, she also finds a small metal box with matches, sailcloth, and a bag of toys. Hearing a strange noise, Jen follows the sound to a hollow tree, only to be startled by a bird that flies out as she peers inside. She then covers Brad's body with large leaves. As the sun sets, she prepares a place to sleep in, just as it begins to rain, uses the sailcloth for cover and sets out containers to collect water. The next morning, Jen is shocked to find dead fish washed up on the shore, along with a shark bearing deep gashes. She collects the fish, cutting off the heads with rocks and storing them in the cooler for later. Searching through another bag, Jen finds a water-damaged notebook with unreadable pages, though a photo of a couple makes her feel more isolated. During another island exploration, Jen encounters piles of rocks and a cross-shaped branch, realizing these are graves. This inspires her to bury Brad by digging a hole in the sand, covering his body with leaves and sand, and marking the grave with a piece of wood bearing his initial. That night, Jen hangs the sailcloth, noticing its tears match the shark's gashes. She uses matches to start a fire and cooks the fish. The next morning, she's horrified to find Brad's body missing from the grave, which is now filled with blood. Realizing there's a serious threat on the island, she crafts a spear from a branch and rock, setting up a log as a backrest so she can keep watch on the jungle. Although Jen eventually falls asleep, she's woken by a mysterious noise but sees nothing in the trees, thinking it must be the fire. The next day, Jen spots items floating near the shore and swims out to collect them. Before returning, she dives to look for more and is stunned by a strange hole in the ocean floor, but she doesn't get close and swims back to shore with her findings. Inside a suitcase, she finds clothes and changes into warmer attire. Later that night, Jen finds photos of the previous owners in the small box. Suddenly, she hears a plane and races to the shore, shooting a flare in its direction, but the plane doesn't notice. As the flare drops into the sea, it illuminates the silhouette of a tall, strange creature. Terrified, Jen grabs her spear and hides in the jungle. The creature soon steps onto the island, searching through the bushes but eventually leaves without finding her. The following morning, Jen realizes the creature has ransacked her camp. While looking at the old photos, Jen spots the monster's eyes in the background. Desperate to escape, she packs the life vests into the suitcase, planning to use it as a raft. However, it's unstable and can't hold her weight, so she throws it back on the sand in frustration. As night falls, Jen hides inside a hollow tree to sleep safely. In the middle of the night, she's woken by the monster's arrival. It grabs her log, rolling and pounding it, forcing Jen to stay silent and protect her head. Eventually, the monster gets bored and leaves. Days pass as Jen survives by fishing during the day and hiding in a hole at night. After practicing, she finally manages to spear a small shark and hangs it on a tree before falling asleep in the hole. Still, she hears the monster taking the shark away. Later, waves wash another body ashore. Jen discovers its face is severely wounded by the monster, and its legs are missing. She hangs the body on a tree and hides, staying awake to observe the monster taking it down to feed. As Jen hears a plane overhead, she gasps but doesn't emerge, since the monster is nearby. By the time it leaves, the plane is gone. The next day, Jen uses the sailcloth, belts, and rope to make a hammock high in the trees, giving her a better view and keeping her out of the monster's reach. That night, Jen watches as the monster pulls at the hammock ropes, trying to bring her down. She struggles and falls, then sprints away as the creature chases her, moving faster by swimming and jumping in and out of the water. It lands in front of her, and Jen stabs it with her spear, but the monster throws her onto the sand and hits her again, tossing her into the water. Before it can attack again, thunder scares it off. Exhausted, Jen climbs a tree to sleep in the rain. The next morning, she finds a life raft floating nearby and swims out to it. Inside, she finds her boyfriend Lucas and Brad's girlfriend Mia. Jen helps them to shore, and the couple embraces tightly. Jen shares her fish and soda, warning them about the monster and showing the photo of its eyes. However, they're skeptical, thinking isolation has affected her judgment. Jen insists they use the raft, but they refuse, fearing the trip will make them more desperate. Afterward, Jen goes for more food and borrows Lucas's Swiss knife, noticing blood on the blade, which raises her suspicions. She tries to convince them to leave again, leading to an argument with Lucas shouting at her. Later, as Lucas and Mia are distracted, Jen gathers her things and pushes the raft into the water to escape. Her friends notice and stop her. In the struggle, Jen kicks Mia, who retaliates by knocking her out with an oar. When Jen wakes up, it's night, and she's horrified to find herself tied to a tree. Her friends refuse to untie her, and Mia leaves to give Lucas some privacy. Lucas begins berating Jen about her behavior, mentioning how he was enjoying himself on the boat while she wasn't satisfied and even threatened to break up with him. Jen thinks it's the wrong time for this discussion, but Lucas continues, yelling that Jen has no home, no money, and no life without him. Lucas accuses Jen of abandoning him on the island after all he's done for her. Jen insists they should leave and talk later, but Lucas hints that she sounds like his friend Zach, without explaining what happened to him. Meanwhile, Mia notices fish pieces floating near the shore. Suddenly, Jen and Lucas hear Mia scream, prompting Lucas to grab a torch and rush to her. He arrives to see the monster attacking Mia and strikes it with the torch, but the beast pushes him aside, then drags Mia into the ocean. By the time Jen cuts herself free from the ropes, it's too late, only blood remains in the water. The next morning, Lucas finally agrees to leave with Jen. They gather fish, cooking it over a fire from their last match for provisions on their trip. After packing everything, they set off in the raft. Inside, Jen is shocked to see bloodstains all around. As Lucas begins rowing, he suddenly spots the creature swimming below them. Its claws reach up, and Lucas quickly hides inside the raft as Jen closes it. The monster relentlessly scratches the raft's bottom until it punches a hole and pokes its head through. Jen kicks it, and Lucas fires the flare gun. The first shot misses, but the second lands in the creature's mouth, allowing Jen and Lucas to push it back into the water with their spear. Thinking they're safe, they're horrified when the creature breaks through the raft's base again, grabbing Jen and pulling her underwater toward its lair. Struggling, Jen remembers Lucas's dagger and stabs the monster, forcing it to release her. Just then, she sees Lucas dive in to save her, but the creature catches him and drags him into its lair. Overwhelmed with grief, Jen swims back to shore, noticing the fire they'd extinguished still has a tiny spark. She quickly rekindles it into proper flames. Jen grabs a notebook, writing a message in case she doesn't survive. She plans to set traps, crafting spears, gathering wood, and digging holes along the sand. During this, she finds a skeleton, using its bones in her strategy. As night falls, the monster emerges, following the fish scent to the bait. Jen lights pyres to trap it, ambushing it with her spear before hiding behind a tree. She waits until its back is turned, stabbing it with a bone. The monster retaliates, knocking her down. Despite the hits, Jen doesn't give up. She stabs the monster repeatedly, each strike weakening it further. It finally pins her to the sand, but she stabs its arm to free herself. It grabs her by the face, poised to end her, but Jen uses one last bone to stab its open wound, making it drop her. The creature swipes at her again, but the pain finally immobilizes it. Seizing the chance, Jen grabs a spear and stabs it repeatedly until it dies. Taking a piece of its tough shell, she cuts off its head as proof of her ordeal. With the head in hand, Jen makes her way to the raft as the jungle burns behind her, leaving the island, and the nightmare, behind.